Cape Town unfurled like a postcard beneath the late spring sun, Table Mountain steady as a crown, the Atlantic glinting beyond Sea Point Promenade, jacaranda petals scattered like confetti on suburban pavements. In a quiet street in Claremont, Clara Bennett leaned over the kitchen counter, one hand circling the small of her back. Welcome to AfroTales TV, your home for rich, exciting, and inspiring stories from around the world. Today's story will touch your heart and keep you hooked till the very end. If you're new here, please hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of our amazing stories. Breathe, love, Daniel said, hovering with a glass of water. His face carried that bright, terrified look men wear when they realize there's nothing to fix, only someone to stand beside. I'm breathing, Clara said, half laughing, half grimacing. I've been breathing for 9 months. They had been married 7 years. Somewhere between year 2 and 3, joy became data. Basal temperatures, ovulation kits, and the staccato of disappointment. 3 miscarriages reshaped their vocabulary. Hope turned careful, prayers turned whispered, so they wouldn't break if unanswered. And now, with a belly round and a crib built, they stood on the edge of the life they had fought for. A phone buzzed on the counter. Naomi Harris, Clara's best friend since childhood, had texted, "I'm in early labor too. St. Mary's. Wish me luck." Clara smiled through the next contraction. "She's in labor as well." Daniel grinned. "You two always were in sync. Exams, first jobs, bad haircuts." "Excuse you," Clara said, swatting him. The fringe was a trend. They arrived at St. Mary's Hospital late afternoon. The labor ward smelled of antiseptic and citrus. A nurse named Gloria strapped a monitor around Clara's belly. The rhythmic whoosh of the baby's heart filled the room. "It's a strong heartbeat," Gloria said. "We'll keep you comfortable. Your obstetrician is on her way." Clara nodded, swallowing tears. "We've waited so long for you," she whispered to her belly. By early evening, the city bruised into mauve, and the windows filled with the tail lights of commuters heading home. Daniel counted breaths, offered ice chips, told bad jokes. When the moment came, it arrived like a train. Fast, loud, unstoppable. Clara arched, pushed, shouted, laughed, then a cry. Bright, healthy, impatient. "She's here," Daniel said, laughing and sobbing at once. "Clara, look!" A pink, furious face, 10 tiny fingers. The nurse laid her on Clara's chest. "Welcome, Sophia," Clara breathed. "Our miracle." Across the corridor, sometime near midnight, Naomi's labor turned rough. Her doctor used the word distress. The room filled with purposeful movement, an extra nurse, a neonatal team on standby. When the baby came, his cry was thin, his chest drawing quick, shallow breaths. "We're taking him to the NICU," the pediatrician said, already moving. "We'll support his breathing and run tests." "What's wrong?" Naomi's voice cracked. "Is he going to be okay?" "We're doing everything," the doctor said, professional, kind. "We'll keep you informed." Alone in the dim room, Naomi stared at the ceiling tiles and listened to the silence where a baby's cry should be. Her phone buzzed with a photo from Daniel. Clara asleep, Sophia wrapped against her chest. "She's perfect," the caption read. Naomi's throat tightened. She tapped out a reply. "Congratulations. I'm so proud of you," and then deleted it. She tried again and sent, "Beautiful. I'm at St. Mary's too. Little boy, they're running tests." Clara replied at once, awake again, joy spilling through her words. "I'm coming in the morning. We'll sit together, like always." Naomi closed her eyes. Tears slid toward her ears. In the small hours, the hum of machines from the neonatal ward became a metronome for a thought that started as a whisper, and then pressed, pressed, pressed. If only my baby were as strong as hers. If only fate would trade for one day, just one day, to let him breathe. Dawn found the city rinsed and new. In the corridor between wards, a security camera blinked a red dot no one noticed. The NICU's doorway was a bright frame, clear curtains, softly chiming monitors, nurses in brisk conversation. Naomi stood at the threshold, scrubbed in, hands trembling inside thin gloves. Her son, she had named him Ethan, lay tiny under the warm halo of a lamp, his skin almost translucent. Tubes threaded into him like small rivers. "Can I hold him?" she asked. "Skin to skin helps," the nurse said, lifting him carefully onto Naomi's chest. "Talk to him. He knows your voice." Naomi whispered stories, childhood summers with Clara at Moisenberg, homework at Clara's mother's kitchen table, shared secrets traded like beads. "We promised to raise our kids as cousins," she said, voice shaking. "I'll keep every promise if you stay." He made a sound like wind slipping under a door. Naomi pressed her lips to his hair, warm as a fresh coin. She felt something old and primal ignite. The ferocious need to protect, to barter, to burn down the world if that would make him live. By late morning, the ward changed shifts. A nurse at the station took a call, a porter pushed a linen cart, a junior doctor argued gently about antibiotics. In Naomi's room, a new nurse delivered breakfast and reminded her to rest. Clara texted again, "I'm coming down the hall with Daniel in a bit. If you're up to it, I'll bring muffins." Naomi placed her phone face down. She stood, dizzy but resolute, slipped on a robe, and walked the corridor counting her steps. Left, right, left, like walking into an exam she had not studied for. Clara's door was ajar. Inside, sunlight spilled across the bed. Sophia slept in a clear bassinet, chest rising in sure, even breaths. Daniel had gone to fetch coffee. The room was otherwise empty. Naomi stood frozen. The thought that had haunted the night spread its roots. One day, one switch, I'll make it right later, when he's stronger, when it's safe. Her body moved before her mind caught up. She hurried back to the NICU, signed Ethan out for kangaroo care, and tucked him inside her robe. He weighed almost nothing, and yet he weighed everything. No one stopped her. She looked like any mother moving between units with a sick baby against her chest. In Clara's room, she laid Ethan in the bassinet with shaking hands, swapping bracelets with fumbling, frantic fingers, the tiny plastic band with a barcode and a surname. She lifted Sophia, warm and certain, into her arms. The baby's cheek rested against Naomi's collarbone as if it had always belonged there. "I'm borrowing hope," Naomi whispered, tears dripping onto silk-soft hair. "Forgive me." She returned to her room by a different corridor. The red recording light above a camera winked once and kept its silent watch. When Clara and Daniel entered minutes later, Daniel's arms full of coffee and muffins, Clara went straight to the bassinet. She paused. "He looks smaller." "Newborns change quickly," Daniel said, but he frowned too. "Maybe the angle?" Clara lifted the baby and he let out a thin, breathy cry. She folded him against her, instinct threading needle-fine through confusion. "He's ours," she said, voice steadying itself. "He's just tired." Daniel's smile found its way back. "He's perfect. We'll give him all the time in the world." Down the corridor, Naomi held Sophia and rocked, guilt licking at her heels. "Just a day," she told herself. "Just until Ethan stabilizes. I'll fix it." Days have a habit of becoming weeks. Years stitched themselves together with ordinary miracles. First smiles, unspooled laughter, first teeth like bright grains of rice. Ethan Bennett, fragile at the beginning, learned to grip Daniel's finger in the park at Kirstenbosch, to chase pigeons on the promenade with fierce little legs, to announce himself to the world with the stubbornness of a boy who had worked hard just to be here. "Slow down," Clara would say, breathless with delight and fear. "You'll fall." "I won't," Ethan replied, fearless. "I always get up." He did get sick more than other kids. Fevers that hung on, coughs that rattled. But he bounced back, and each bounce back felt like a win the whole family claimed. Sophia Harris grew tall and quick-witted, her laughter a bell in Naomi's small rondabosh garden. She lined up pebbles and named them, drew careful houses, insisted that grass felt like the hair of the earth. Whenever she visited the Bennetts, she and Ethan tumbled into invented worlds. Pirate camps behind sofas, train stations made from cardboard. On a Bry afternoon in Newlands, they all gathered. Clara and Daniel at the grill, Naomi dressing a salad that didn't need dressing. The mountain grinned down at them. The city washed around them like a tide. "You two ever think about moving closer?" Daniel asked Naomi. "We'd watch Sophia whenever you needed. Easy school runs." Naomi's smile was too bright. "I like where we are. Close enough." Clara glanced at her friend, at the way shadows pooled in the corners of her eyes sometimes. "How's work?" she asked. Naomi had taken a project manager role at a small marketing firm, steady enough to keep things going. "Good. Busy," Naomi said, then tipped her chin toward Ethan. "He's strong." "He is," Clara said. Pride and relief mingled. "He's got this stubborn Bennett thing. Wonder where he gets it." Daniel raised a hand. "Guilty." Later, when everyone had gone, Naomi stood in Sophia's doorway and watched her sleep. Guilt was a quiet roommate. It ran alongside joy, spiking on birthdays, peaking on hospital nights when Ethan's cough sounded like tearing paper and Clara texted for prayers. More than once Naomi typed, "I need to tell you something," and then backspaced until the truth evaporated. On Ethan's 8th birthday, a magic show in the backyard left him roaring with laughter. As the magician made a silk scarf vanish, Naomi felt her stomach drop. She had made a different kind of thing vanish, and unlike scarves, stolen babies don't slip back into sleeves. She told herself the same script. I will make it right when he's stronger, but the script had become the story. And stories, once they harden, are prisons. Clara suspected nothing that could be said aloud. Still, sometimes when Sophia's hand found her own during a film night, Clara felt a tug she didn't have words for, as if the air around the girl grew warmer by a degree. She told herself it was her love for Naomi spilling over. "Do you ever think about having another?" Daniel asked one night in bed. Clara stared into the dark. "Sometimes. Mostly I think about keeping what we have safe." Daniel slid closer until their knees touched. "We've already climbed a mountain," he said. "We can stand here a while and look at the view." She smiled against his shoulder. "Let's look." The school assembly smelled of varnished floors and 100 packed lunches. Ethan stood in line with his classmates, tapping his foot to a song about recycling. Clara sat in the crowd, waving when he searched for her. He grinned, and then the grin crumpled. His shoulders swayed as if a wind had run through him. He folded slowly and lay still. Everything sped up. Teachers ran. Someone called, "Ambulance!" The world narrowed to a tunnel with flashing lights at the end. At St. Mary's, triage moved him to resuscitation. Dr. Jacobs greeted Clara and Daniel with urgent calm. "He's severely anemic," he said. "We need to transfuse immediately." "Take mine," Daniel said, rolling up his sleeve. "We'll test," Dr. Jacobs replied, motioning to a nurse. Clara's breath came in shallow increments. "He's had colds. He's been tired. I should have—" "You brought him," Daniel said. "That's what you should have done." A nurse returned with lab slips. Her face carried a crease of confusion. "Sir, your blood type doesn't match." Daniel blinked. "I'm O positive." "Your son is AB negative," the nurse said gently. "That's rare," Dr. Jacobs added, already motioning for the hospital's blood bank to prepare universal donor units. Clara held out her arm. "Test me. I'm A positive. Maybe—" Minutes stretched. Alarms chirped. Monitors drew lines across screens like restless pens. The nurse returned. "Yours doesn't match either, Mrs. Bennett." Ice slid into the room. Daniel looked at Clara, then at Ethan, then back to Clara. "What are they saying?" Clara shook her head. "I don't know. Mistakes happen. Lab errors, mix-ups." She looked at Dr. Jacobs. "Right? Tell us that." "We'll transfuse with a compatible type now," he said, professional face never slipping. "We also recommend further testing to rule out lab errors." They transfused. Ethan's color improved by a shade. He opened his eyes once and whispered, "Mom?" "I'm here," Clara said, gripping his fingers. "I'm right here." In the family room, Daniel paced. "I love you," he said without looking up. "That's not a question. But, Clara, explain to me how our blood doesn't match our son's." "I can't," she said, and felt the ground give way. Unless? Daniel's voice was splintered wood. "Unless he isn't ours," she whispered, and the words fell into the room like a stone into clear water, leaving ripples that would never cease. They authorized tests. Paternity first. The result pinged into the system by the next morning. Negative. Daniel closed his eyes, breath burning out of him. "Tell me if there's someone else," he said hoarsely. "Lie to me if you have to. Just don't leave me in this empty place." "There isn't," Clara said, reaching for him. "There has never been anyone else." "Maternity test," she told Dr. Jacobs, her voice steady. "Run it." "Clara," Daniel started, but she lifted a hand. "Run it." The result landed with the same implacable weight. Negative. Clara sat very still. Then she stood, very calm, as if she were stepping onto a stage, and said, "Call your administrator, and your legal team, and your head of nursing. This hospital needs to review every record from the week we delivered. If our son is not our son, then someone took him from us." They met in a glass-walled conference room softened by a ficus in the corner. Ms. Lorraine Botha, the hospital's administrator, wore a navy suit and the face of someone who had been in crisis meetings before. "We are deeply sorry for what you're going through," she said. "We will cooperate fully. We retain CCTV footage for 10 years. We'll begin a comprehensive review now. We'll also run an audit of neonatal admissions and discharges during that week," added Mr. Patel, head of compliance. If there was a switch, it may have been documented in ways that seemed inconsequential at the time. Clara folded her hands on the table and looked at each of them. "A decade ago, on a Thursday. We were in rooms 12 and 14. My best friend delivered the next night." She swallowed. "Her name is Naomi Harris." Daniel flinched. "Clara..." "We're going to look at everything anyway," Clara said softly. "Better to say what's true." The team reviewed logs, birth bracelets, barcode scans. They requested archived footage. That afternoon, a technician wheeled in a cart and set up a monitor. Grainy black and white images filled the screen. Corridors, nurses' stations, doorways breathing open and shut. "There," the technician said, tapping a key. A timestamp flashed, 10:47 p.m. The camera showed the short hall outside rooms 12 and 14. A woman in a hospital robe moved into frame, hair tied up, face turned away. She walked to room 12, paused, entered. Minutes later she emerged, cradling a swaddled baby, and moved down the hall. A second angle caught her halfway down the corridor. She shifted the bundle, her face turned just enough to be seen. Naomi. Daniel swore softly, as if the word had burned him from the inside. Clara made a sound that might have been a laugh and might have been a sob. "I told her everything," she said, looking not at the screen now, but at nothing. "Every fear, every hope. We promised." She stopped. Ms. Botha leaned forward. "We will give this footage to the police," she said gently. "You can decide your next steps with your counsel. We understand if you wish to pursue civil action, though from this evidence the act appears to have been perpetrated by a third party. Clara nodded as if from far away. I want my daughter, she said, and I want to sit next to my son's bed until he's well enough to be told what happened and who he is. Daniel spoke at last, voice raw. And I want to look Naomi in the eye and hear her say it. He and Clara went back to Ethan's room and sat on either side of the bed. Machines blinked. The boy slept. Clara smoothed his hair the way she had since he had any, and Daniel rested his hand on their son's foot. Whatever else is true, Clara said, he is ours. Daniel nodded. Forever. When they stood to leave, Clara said, call the police. And because it was the final step between the old life and the new, she took out her phone and typed a message to Naomi. We need to talk. It's urgent. Where are you? 3 marching dots appeared. Then, home. Is Ethan okay? Clara stared at the words until they blurred. We'll come now. Rhonda Bosch was drowsy in the late afternoon, the mountain freckled with light. Naomi's small house looked unchanged. White walls, a blue front door, a lemon tree leaning over the fence. Sophia sat cross-legged on the lawn, a book open on her knees. She looked up, reading a face she didn't know how to read yet. Hello? Clara said, voice soft. It came out instinctively, a mother greeting her child. What are you reading? Matilda, Sophia replied. She's brave. That she is. Clara's throat ached. 2 officers waited at the curb. Daniel stood beside them, fists slack at his sides. Naomi stepped into the doorway. Her eyes landed on Clara, then on the officers, and everything in her face fell through stages. Denial, calculation, exhaustion, until at last there was only the truth. Inside, she said, backing up. We shouldn't do this on the lawn. They gathered in the living room. A photo on the mantel showed the 4 of them years ago at Muizenberg, 2 women with salt-tangled hair, and 2 babies wrapped in towels like little kings. Naomi stared at it too long. Say it, Daniel said quietly. Naomi's shoulders sagged. I swapped them. The words clanged and then settled, like cutlery dropped into a drawer. I thought Ethan was dying. He was so small, so blue. I thought if I gave him to you, he would have a chance. I told myself it was a day, 2 days. Then a week passed, and you were so happy, and he was okay. She shook her head. I was going to fix it. I was always going to fix it. Clara pressed a hand to the back of the sofa to steady herself. You took my daughter, she said, each word a thread she was pulling from her own throat. You watched me love your son and call him mine. You had tea in my kitchen and told me I was brave while you... I know, Naomi said, voice breaking. I know. I live with it every day. Daniel looked at Sophia, who stood in the doorway gripping the doorframe, trying to make sense of the grown-up storm. He crouched so they were eye level. Hi, Sophia, he said gently. I'm Daniel. Could you grab your backpack for me? We're going to go to our house for a little while. Your mom? He paused, looked at Naomi, corrected himself. Naomi needs to talk to these officers. Sophia looked to Naomi for instructions. Naomi swallowed. Go with them, sweetheart, she said. I'll come soon. Sophia hesitated, then left the room. The lemon tree tapped the window. An officer cleared his throat. Miss Harris, we have a warrant to search the premises and to take you into custody for questioning. You have the right... Naomi nodded, tears tracking lines she did not wipe away. Let me hug her. The officer glanced at Daniel and Clara. Daniel nodded. Naomi caught Sophia in the hallway and hugged her hard, breathing in the coconut shampoo and playground dust. You are brilliant and brave, she whispered into the girl's hair. No matter what anyone says next, that will always be true. They led her out. Neighbors watched behind curtains, small pale moons caught in the glass. Clara walked to the garden, knelt in front of Sophia, reached out with hands that were steady only because they had to be. "I'm Clara," she said. "I used to babysit you when you were tiny. Do you remember my house, the big fig tree?" Sophia nodded uncertainly. "You made pancakes shaped like hearts." Clara smiled wetly. "I did." "Where's Ethan?" Sophia asked. "He always lets me be the station master." "He's at the hospital," Clara said, voice careful. "He's very brave." Sophia slid her small hand into Clara's. "I want to see him." "We will," Clara promised. "We will." Hospitals have a sound that gets under your skin. The low choir of machines, the wheeled whisper of trolleys, the murmur of night rounds. In the pediatric unit, Clara sat on one side of Ethan's bed and Daniel on the other. Sophia dozed on a chair, her head on Clara's shoulder. The three of them looked like a family even before the world would agree to the shape. Ethan woke briefly. His eyes found Clara first, then Daniel. "Hey," he said, a ghost of his usual swagger. "Did we win?" "We're winning," Daniel said, forcing his voice bright. "We're very annoying to play against." Ethan's gaze slid to Sophia. "Hey, Soph, you can be the station master," he murmured. "But only if you don't fine me for running." "I'll fine you a little," Sophia said, cheeks wet. "I'm very fair." A nurse adjusted a drip. Dr. Jacobs spoke to them in the language of numbers, counts and pressures, markers and trends. Some numbers improved, others refused. 2 steps forward, 3 back. The staff worked like midnight carpenters building a bridge while the river rose. "May I?" Clara asked the nurse, touching the bed rail. The woman nodded. Clara slid her hand into Ethan's, memorizing the distance between his knuckles. That night, Cape Town's wind rattled the hospital windows. Ethan's breaths thinned. Alarms did not shriek. They made small, polite sounds that felt worse. The doctor's face took on the still shape of someone who has already done everything in the manual and a few things that aren't. "Mom," Ethan said, eyes on hers. "Don't be scared." "I'm not," she lied. "I'm right here." He blinked slowly, as if agreeing. Daniel pressed his lips to Ethan's hair. The monitors wrote a final straight line like a sentence ending without its period. "There are cries you make for show, and cries that live at the base of your ribs." Clara made the latter. Daniel's shoulders bowed. Sophia hid her face and then did not, lifting her chin with an old, new courage. Later, a counselor named Aisha brought tissues and a thermos of tea. She spoke softly about grief being a landscape you learn by walking. "You loved him well," she said. "That changes the shape of the loss, even if it doesn't change the fact." When the news reached the holding cells, a guard told Naomi. She folded forward like paper being creased and creased again until it was small enough to hold. "My son," she said, not loudly at all, and somewhere in the building a fluorescent light clicked. Clara signed forms she didn't read. Daniel arranged for a service. They chose a small chapel with blue glass windows. Friends came, teachers came. The magician from Ethan's 8th birthday came and stood at the back with a hat in his hand. Daniel spoke about a boy who loved trains and fairness. Clara did not speak. She sang the lullaby she had sung on fever nights. The sound trembled but did not break. Outside, the mountain watched, untroubled and eternal. Humans attempted eternity in other ways. Memory, story, love that refuses to look at a clock. Courtrooms are built to contain heat, dark wood, high ceilings, soft voices that carry anyway. The state ver's Naomi Harris opened with charges: child abduction, fraud, offenses related to falsification of hospital identification. A civil action against St. Mary's sat on a different docket. The hospital already moving to settle for security failures the footage had made plain. Doors propped, protocols too trusting by half. Naomi arrived in a navy dress someone had brought her that did not fit quite right. She looked like a person who had tried to sleep and found only the echo of the day. Her counsel, a woman with calm eyes named Buzi Mahlangu, rested a hand on her arm. The prosecutor laid out the story with a prosecutorial plainness that gave no shelter. Time-stamped footage, swapped bracelets, altered logs, a decade of deception. He did not dwell on melodrama. He didn't need to. Busy stood and told a different story alongside it, about a panicked new mother, a failing system, an initial act of desperation that calcified into something monstrous, because there is no good moment to confess a ruin. She did not ask for absolution. She asked for understanding to temper justice. Clara took the stand. She described friendship, note-passing in classrooms, stolen lipstick before school dances, sharing a bed on nights when storms made them laugh. She described a birth, a bassinet, a life built on a wrong foundation that felt right until it wasn't. "Do you hate her?" Busy asked gently. Clara was silent for a long time. "I hate what she did," she said at last. "I hate that my son died without knowing the whole truth of his life. I hate that my daughter has a complicated beginning she didn't ask for. I don't know if hate is the word for a person you loved once, and maybe love in some broken way still. But I know accountability is a kind of love too, one that stops harm from continuing." Naomi spoke last. "I have no excuse," she said. "Only a reason that doesn't repair anything. I thought I was saving my child. I told myself I was borrowing yours and would return her. But I kept making that promise to myself until it turned into a lie. I won't ask for forgiveness because it feels like theft again. I will ask for mercy for Sophia." The judge, Justice van der Merwe, looked at papers that did not show the ocean or the mountain or a lemon tree. "The law cannot mend a wound," he said. "It can only recognize it and protect others from being cut by the same blade." He sentenced Naomi to 12 years. He ordered the hospital to adopt stricter protocols, which it had already begun. After the gavel, the room exhaled. Naomi turned, searching for Clara in the small tide of movement. Their eyes met for a second that stretched. 2 childhoods, 1,000 breakfasts, 100 phone calls telescoped into the space between. Clara nodded once, neither absolution nor contempt. Simply recognition. "I see you, and I see what you did, and both things are true." Grief changed the Bennett house, but it did not empty it. There were still mornings. There were still toast crumbs. There was now Sophia, who woke at 4 for a week, and then 5, and then slept to 6. The first night she stayed over, she wandered the hallway looking at framed photos. "Is that me?" she asked, pointing to a picture of baby Sophia in a towel at Meisenberg, salt water bright on her forehead. "Yes," Clara said. "That was a good day." "Was I yours then?" Sophia asked, voice small but unafraid. Clara crouched so they were level. "You were always mine," she said carefully, "even when I didn't know how to find you. And you were Naomi's in the ways that love makes something yours too." She took a breath. "It's a big thing for a small person to hold. You don't have to hold it all at once." Sophia thought about that. "Can I be both?" she asked finally. "You already are," Daniel said from the doorway, leaning his shoulder against the frame the way he did when he wanted to look casual and also be very present. "You have 2 histories and 1 future." They made a future that looked like this. Therapy on Tuesdays with Aisha, who taught them language for complicated love. Friday night pancakes shaped like hearts and, by Sophia's executive decree, stars. Sunday afternoons planting herbs beneath the fig tree. They kept Ethan in their days, not as a ghost that rattled the cupboards, but as a boy who had laughed loudly and insisted on fairness. "Station master needs a whistle," Sophia announced one afternoon, hanging an old bicycle bell around her neck. "Seems right," Daniel said. "I was once fined for jaywalking in my own kitchen." "That tracks," Clara said, smiling into the sink. Once, months later, Clara took Sophia to Polesmore Prison for a supervised visit. She had thought long and hard and spoken to Aisha and argued with herself in the car. They sat in a bright room that tried not to look like what it was. Naomi entered, thinner, the blue in her eyes duller but present. She looked at Sophia the way you look at the sun through your fingers, awed, cautious, aware of light and burn. "Hi," Sophia said. "Hi," Naomi managed. Her hands stayed flat on the table. Clara remained quiet for a time. At last she said, "We are doing our best to build something sturdy. That includes telling the truth. We won't come every month. We may not come again for a while. I wanted this once, so you could see her and she could see you, and we could all be people in a room and not just stories in each other's heads." Naomi nodded. "Thank you." Sophia slid a drawing across the table. 3 figures beneath a lopsided sun. "This is me," she said, pointing. "This is Clara. This is Daniel. I didn't have enough yellow for the sun." "It's perfect," Naomi said, and did not cry, and somehow that made the air wobble more. Outside afterward, the mountain was a blue-gray giant. Sophia took Clara's hand. "Do we have to be sad now?" she asked. "We can be anything now," Clara said, meaning it more than she would have believed months earlier. "We can get ice cream." "Pistachio," Sophia said decisively. "And maybe we can get one for Ethan and put it by the fig tree, just for a minute." They did. The melting cone made a small, sweet puddle by the roots. Clara felt something unstick in her chest, a tightness loosening. She knelt and smoothed the grass. "We love you," she whispered. Not past tense, not future, but the present that holds both. Cape Town went on. Buses and bicycles and biltong shops, markets and music and wind. On a Saturday morning at the Oranjezicht market, Clara and Daniel and Sophia stood in line for croissants. A woman behind them admired Sophia's whistle. "Station master," Sophia said, solemn. "Very fair, but quite strict." "Ah," the woman smiled, "the best kind." They walked home under a sky so clean it felt new. The lemon tree in Rondebosch went on making lemons. The hospital implemented badges and alarms and double checks. In a prison in Tokai, a woman counted days and then resolved to count something else. Books read, apologies written, hard truths faced like weather. At the Bennett house, the fig tree made shade. There was laughter. There were stories at the table and shoes kicked off at the door. There was a photo on the mantel, 3 people and 2 histories, and 1 future. The mountain watched, as mountains do, and if it could speak, it would have said what Clara said often now in the quiet. "We are here. We are mending. We are not finished." Thank you for watching this story on AfroTales TV. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up, leave us a comment, and share with friends and family. We have more beautiful stories coming your way, so subscribe and stay tuned. See you in the next one.